Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Kim Havens, and I am the event manager here at An Unlikely Story in Plainville, Massachusetts. I am so excited to welcome Erin Entrada Kelly to celebrate the release of her new book, Maybe Marisol Rainey, just out yesterday, one day old. She will be joined in conversation tonight with Jeff Kinney, our owner of An Unlikely Story and best-selling author of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid series. So before we start, I have a couple pointers for you. If you have any issues with your video or audio quality, just try refreshing your page. If that doesn't work, just go ahead and exit out of the browser and log back in using Google Chrome. If you have any questions for Erin, you can enter them in the question and answer box at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of them as we can at the end. And if you would like to purchase a copy of Maybe Marisol Rainey, you can click the green button at the center bottom of the screen. And look, Erin has signed book plates. So you will get a book plate, and actually some of the books are actually even signed with doodles. So you can get double signatures. So Erin Entrada Kelly received the 2018 Newbery Medal for Hello Universe, a 2021 Newbery Honor for We Dream of Space, the 2017 APALA Award for The Land of Forgotten Girls, and the 2016 Golden Kite Honor Award for Blackbird Fly, among other honors. Tonight, she's going to tell us all about her seventh book, the first in the Maybe Marisol Rainey series, which is her first that she both wrote and illustrated. Erin is a New York Times bestseller whose work has been translated into several languages. Her fifth book, Lani of the Distant Sea, was a finalist for the 2020 Methapaic Award for Children's Fantasy. Lani received 6 stars reviews and was named one of the best books of the year by the New York Public Library, the Hornbook, Booklist, Book Pages, and many others. All of Erin's books are Junior Library Guild selections. So her first book, You Go First, is being adapted for the stage when we're allowed to all go and see things on the stage, and Hello Universe is being adapted by Netflix. Erin has a bachelor's degree in women's studies and liberal arts from McNeese State University and an MFA from Rosemont College, and she is joining us today from Delaware. Marisol Rainey is a multi-ethnic Filipina girl growing up in South Louisiana. She is quiet and sweet and scared of everything. She loves cats, her stuffed animals, and her best friend Jada, who is inspired by Erin's very old childhood BFF. I guarantee you will fall in love with Marisol, just as I did. And since Marisol loves cats and has many pairs of cat ears on her dresser that she named Mabel, I'm wearing my cat headband. Joining Erin this evening is our very own Jeff Kinney, the owner of our magical bookstore. Erin and Jeff, it is so nice to welcome you. Hello, Erin. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Too. And there's Jeff. Hey, Jeff.
Hey, Kim. Thanks for that great introduction. Erin, thank you so much for joining us. I have to say, I've been really excited about this event, and I feel like I've gotten to know you a little bit by reading your books. I'm so excited to get to meet you in person, so welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So I loved your new book, Maybe Marisol Rainey. It is really sweet, it's heartwarming, it's very authentic, which I thought that was really cool. Something tells me there's a lot of Marisol Rainey in you. Can you tell us a bit about this girl, how she came to be?
Yes, absolutely. So when my editor and I were discussing writing for a younger elementary audience, I set out to write, this great book about a spunky, precocious girl, because I felt like that's what we see a lot in that space, and I was having a lot of trouble like finding that voice. And so my editor and I met in person, and I was kind of like telling her, I'm really having trouble finding this character's voice. I went to this whole spiel, and she just kind of listened and she nodded, and she's very hard to read. So when I finished talking, I just sat there and like waited for her to say something, and she said, why don't you just write about yourself at that age? And I remember scoffing at that. I said, no one would want to read that book. I'm just picturing like 8-year-old Erin in her room reading and writing, that is not a book. And I told her, I said, I was scared of everything. I didn't even climb trees because I was convinced I would fall out of them. And she, basically was like, well, think about it. So on the train ride home, I started thinking about it, and I thought, what does it mean to be an interesting kid anyway? If I was not the loudest kid, I certainly was not the most athletic or the cleverest or the cutest, but does that mean I wasn't interesting? I would never want a kid to feel like they're not interesting because of those reasons, so I started to think about, like, what kind of kid was I, and kind of unpacking all that. And basically, once that happened, Marisol came so easily to me. So that's why she reads authentically, because she's basically me when I was 8 years old.
Right. When I was writing Diary of a Wimpy Kid, at first I called it Greg Heffley's Journal, grade 7. And I wanted to call it Diary of a Wimpy Kid the whole time, because that's what I was. But I was like, nobody will buy it. Nobody will buy this book, because they don't want to. If they pick up this book off the shelf, they might feel like they identify with the character. And, what boy especially wants to say, I'm a wimpy kid? And I feel like that's been the difference maker in my book. And I think Marisol, one of the things that makes her so interesting is that the reader has figured her out before she's figured herself out. And, it takes her a long time to say the words, I'm scared. Why was that important to you to kind of hide that truth from herself?
I think because that's what we all do. That's certainly what I did. I didn't want to be the scared kid. It's not a good feeling to be the scared kid. And I always had this kind of fear or inkling when I was growing up that I was a coward, that I was a wimpy kid, that I wasn't strong like other people. And you kind of feel like maybe you're the only one who feels that way, because everyone else seems to know what they're doing, And it takes a long time for us to admit, even as adults, when we're wrong, when we're afraid, because we don't want to be those things. I mean, who wants to be those things? And I feel like for Marisol, it made sense for her and for the reader to see her build up to that moment, right? Because that's why we love underdogs anyway, because we get to see them reach that apex, and we're rooting for them, hopefully, along the way.
Yeah, and so Marisol has a love-hate relationship with the tree in her backyard, which she calls Pepina. Hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Yes.
And she's afraid to climb the tree. And did you have a challenge like this in your life, fear you wanted to overcome?
Yes. In fact, I didn't climb my first tree until this past Sunday. Because so basically Marisol's story is based on my own. I was afraid to do many of the things that Marisol is afraid to do. So she's afraid of stairs, like she's afraid she's going to fall. I mean, that was me. So yes, I've definitely, I climbed my first tree Sunday.
Yeah.
I had a friend there who gave me a boost. It all worked out.
I saw the picture online, and I have to say, it's not clear how high off the ground you were.
Well,
it's cropped very tight.
That there may have been some intentional cropping. The point, Jeff, is that I was in the tree. That's the headline here, okay?
What's really funny is that Twitter just today took off its it used to crop photos, vertically, so you couldn't see the whole photo, and they just today cropped, took that feature away. So we may see that the ground is just an inch under.
Never you mind, people. Never you mind.
So I have an un-Marisol story. So you have this great character, Jada, who's a very understanding friend. Everybody would love to have a friend like Jada. My younger brother growing up, he really wanted to go in this castle slide. And it was sort of like a tube, a metal cylinder. And then at the top, you go down this twirly slide. I was 6 years older than my brother, and I told him, I said, there's, when you get to the top, they hand you a glass of milk and a Shazam doll, and there's a ceremony, and then, it's the most fun thing in the world. So he finally goes up the tube, and I'm right behind him in a very menacing way. And when he gets to the top and finds no glass of milk and all that, he has no choice but to go down the slide. So I think I was the opposite of Jada, who is very supportive.
Yes, I think that's anti-Jada. I think that was very un-Jada of you.
Right. Well, we write different types of books. Can you tell us a little bit about your Jada growing up? Did you have a best friend?
I did. So Jada is very much inspired by my own childhood best friend. Her name was Roz. Well, her name still is Roz.
Yeah.
And like Jada, Roz was very, very smart. And, you know, I think about this a lot because you know how sometimes you forget your password. And one of the prompts is, who was your childhood best friend?
Yeah.
You know, because we all remember who that person is, whether we're still in touch with them or not. And Roz was very much such a presence in my life. And I just remember that feeling of best friendship that you have at that age that's so special that you kind of don't have that again in life. You know, there's something very intense and sweet and innocent about it. So yes, she's inspired by Roz.
That's really cool. Well, you were lucky to have a friend like that. I read a quote from Mindy Kaling recently, which is that a best friend isn't a person, it's a category of people. And I was wondering, do you have lots of best friends now, especially as you've entered the, you know, the kid lit community? Do you have a lot of people that you rely on, or do you just have a few?
I have, you know what? I've always been one of those people. I feel like there's kind of two kinds of people. There's people who have like a whole lot of friends. And I've always been a person who's had, you know, one or two very close friends. And I think that's one of the struggles when you get to middle school, right? Because the world is so much bigger all of a sudden. And if you're one of those people like I was who only had one or two best friends, it's really easy to quickly get lost in that shuffle. But so I've always been someone who has a lot of friends, but has only like one or two, you know, BFFs.
Yeah, that's really funny. I'm a Celtics fan up here. I know you're an Eagles fan down there. So who's your basketball team? Or do you care about basketball?
No, I don't really have a basketball team.
Okay. But I saw this guy in a commercial that was like a Celtics commercial. He's like a super fan. And I said to my kids when I saw the video, I was like, I'm going to be friends with that guy. And now he's like my best friend, I think. and it's we've spent the last like 6 Christmases together. So I'm the same way as you, is that I only have like one or two really close friends, and then, you know, everybody else is kind of in you know, at a different level. Still good, but
yes,
we share that in common. So one of the things that makes the book really feel authentic is that you know, the girls' time. I'm assuming this takes place in the summertime. Yes. I didn't catch that. Yeah, the girls' time is completely unstructured. You know, each day really begins with the question of, what do you want to do today? And that really brought me back to my own childhood. Did you have summer days like that? Does that take you back?
Oh yeah, definitely. And it was a lot of things like they do, is ride bikes. Are we going to ride bikes today? Are we going to play games? You know, I like to play board games. Yeah. Sometimes I would force my friends to write with me. So I would say, let's write stories today. Right. But, you know, and then sometimes there was like a democracy involved where you're like, well, maybe we should vote on what we want to do. Yeah. You know, so yeah, I definitely remember those days.
Yeah, and a very smart person in the right-hand column said that hopefully you change your password in case your password is actually your childhood. Maybe we shouldn't talk about our password hints in this conversation. Now, one of the things that the girls love to do is to spy on their neighbors. And they're not spying on, you know, the neighbors aren't really doing anything scandalous, but the girls, you know, they love to do this. And that reminds me of my childhood as well. What is it about spying that's so appealing to kids?
I think it's just something like just being able to see people when they don't know you're there. I don't really know what it is, because I remember like talking on fake walkie-talkies to my best friend and being like, they're watching TV. They're changing the channel. They're going into the kitchen for snacks. I mean, nobody was doing anything, you know, but it was just something, you know, I don't know if we ever totally grow out of it, because I think there's something like really interesting about observing people in their natural habitat.
Yeah. Well, now we watch reality TV.
There you go.
Somebody wants to know your mother's maiden name. Let's get over that one. One of Marisol's quirks is that she names inanimate objects in the household. Was that one of your quirks as well?
It was, and it still is, because, you know, one of the things when I was Marisol's age is I really believed that everything was alive, like sentient, you know, like everything had feelings. So I would like talk to the furniture around the house. My sister did not know what was wrong with me. I'd be whispering, you know, like to the coffee table or to the lamp, because I thought that they were alive. So even today, I have, you know, my computer is named Dr. Theopolis that I'm talking to you on. My car is named Polly. I have names for pretty much everything, just like Marisol. Yeah.
Yeah. So Toy Story, you know, probably ruined a generation of kids who now are terrified to throw away their toys. You know? Did you have a favorite toy growing up?
I had a lot of stuffed animals like Marisol, and I had favorite stuffed animals. And you know, like I would pick a special stuffed animal to sleep with me in the bed, but then I would feel guilty. I would see like all my other stuffed animals like glaring at me from the other side of the room. So then I had to like call a conference with the stuffed animals and say, okay, I love all of you equally. And then I put them on a rotation so that everyone could sleep in the bed with me because I didn't want anyone's feelings to be hurt.
That is very stressful. My brother used to, he had 100 stuffed animals. He was terrified that somebody was going to come into his room and attack him. So he'd bury himself under the stuffed animals, figuring that they'd be the wall of defense, you know. So I think he had a little bit a less
camouflage. Yeah,
exactly. So I noticed on your website that you're calling this book, Maybe Marisol Rainey, #1. It's not often that an author comes out with #1. You know, you don't usually talk about #1 until you get to #2. But so this is your first series. What made you decide to write a series? Why switch it up like that?
You know, I feel like, I don't know if there's like one tangible reason, only that I think that I wanted Marisol to be a character that readers could connect with and stay with. And there's something, as you know, there's something really special about having a series of books that follow the same character, and it builds a relationship that with readers that's different than standalone novels, you know, and then that character becomes like a really part of the thread work of childhood, right? Because I spend so many books with the same character, and it just becomes a defining feature of their childhood.
And you were a Judy Blume reader, Beverly Cleary also?
Of course, yes, absolutely.
I really didn't. Those are the only two authors I really cycled through because my sister, I had an older sister. She brought the books into the house, and then the books made their way into the bathroom. So that's where I encountered them. I read Freckle Juice, of course, Tales of Fourth Grade Nothing. I realized that Are You There, God, It's Me, Margaret was a little bit taboo, and it had something to do with punctuation. So I just kind of avoided that one. But I did read Blubber, so I'm pretty caught up on
well, you've got a good catalog of Judy Blume there. She's probably my biggest influence. I think a lot of authors today would probably cite that, especially writing middle grade. But so I was definitely a huge Judy Blume fan.
Have you gotten to meet her?
Not yet. I was going to go to, she was speaking at Book Expo last year, right? And she was like the keynote speaker. I was so excited. And then of course, COVID happened. So I have not got to meet her yet.
Well, I'm sure she would welcome you at her bookstore.
I know, I need to go.
Yeah, one time I was like, I got to get down there. And I looked into it and it was like, okay, X number of hours to Miami and then like a 5-hour drive or something like that to, you know, where she is. So we might have to, maybe we'll carpool on that one.
Yeah. Let's do it. Road trip.
Something that was really fun about this book is I read the book. I love the illustrations. I looked for the illustrator's name on the cover and I was like, ooh, she's one of these people that doesn't even list her illustrator. But no, the illustrator is you.
The illustrator is me. I would never not list an illustrator, Jeff. No, I would never do that.
Right. The drawings are great. Why was it important to you that you did the illustrations yourself?
You know, I'm going to be totally honest and tell you that I drew doodles, what I call them doodles, and I would post them on Instagram. And my editor is the one who saw them. And she's like, oh, you draw. It never would have occurred to me to illustrate a book, but she really believed in me. Yeah. And that really made all the difference because it was a nightmare. I mean, I was going through such imposter syndrome because I saw myself as a writer, not an illustrator.
Yeah.
And I would just say, oh, I do doodles. I didn't even want to use the word illustrator because I was worried that the other illustrators, like the real illustrators, you know, would be like, okay, you're an illustrator, Erin. But of course, everyone's wonderful. Nobody thought that. But in my head, they were thinking that. Yeah. You know, so, you know, I just started like teaching myself how to draw a character. And I had no idea what I was doing.
Well, they're great. The illustrations are great. And I have to admit, I'm going to say something that's a little shameful. is that I read the book on my phone because I had a chance to be in a hammock yesterday. I know, but here's the thing, is that all the illustrations are only as wide as the phone, right? So I was like, why did she do this one so small? And then I come into the office and get the book, and, you know, imagine that, the width of your phone, you know.
Yeah,
so
see.
I didn't get the full experience. Great drawings. I really love them. Lots of character, and exactly right for the age too, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. Yes, of course, I hope so.
So let's talk about some of your other books. You're very prolific. So some of your other books are We Dream of Space, Blackbird Fly, The Land of Forgotten Girls. They're all up there with lots of shiny stickers. I'm going to ask you a question before we talk about your books. I want to know if this is unethical. My books, I'll never have any hope of getting one of those foil stickers on my book, right? Mm-hmm. So my question to you is, would it be ethical for me to make my own foil sticker? Because nobody ever looks like what's written on the foil. You know, they just see the tiny thing. They're like parent approved, librarian approved. I think it would be unethical, wouldn't it?
I think you should ask yourself, can you do it? Or should you do it?
Right. What if the sticker said, "This is a terrible book"? I mean,
okay, maybe.
Right.
Okay, all right, maybe. Well, how small is the font going to be? That's the question. You know what I mean?
Well, it's on foil. You can barely read it when it's embossed like that.
Okay, well, you know, that might be what's on these stickers. You never know.
It's terrible. I finished Hello Universe today. Also read on my phone, but I couldn't put my phone down. And I am going to confess something to you that's going to make me sound like a terrible person, but I'm a little bit terrible. You should know. Usually when I read a kid's book, and I read a lot, I say, could I have done that? And I'm like, maybe I could have. Sometimes yes, sometimes maybe. I read that book and I said, damn it, I couldn't have pulled that off. Not at all. I loved the book. It's so impressive. It's like a big puzzle. It's put together so well and in such a satisfying way. It's no wonder you won the Newbery Medal for that. Did you know that book was special when you were writing it?
Well, it's weird to say no because every book is special, but there's no way I was writing it like this is going to be a Newbery Medal winner. You know, I mean, that thought never crosses my mind. P.S. I have way too much like self-loathing to think that. But I knew. Well, put it this way, my editor responded very, very strongly to the book. I mean, she's a cheerleader for all my books, but she really thought it was something special, which told me that maybe it was something special. And, and it turned out it was. So no, I had no inkling, I was just writing the book, the story that I wanted to tell, but, it never dawned on me in a million years that it would go where it went.
Yeah, the highest praise I could give you is to say, and you don't need praise from me, you've already got the sticker, but the best praise I can give you is that I felt like it was this generation's When You Reach Me, which is one of my favorite books.
That's my favorite book, Jeff.
It's so good. Have you met Rebecca Stead?
I have. Oh, okay. And I love when sometimes we're compared, and I consider she's such an incredible author. When You Reach Me and The One and Only Ivan are two of my favorite books. So that's an incredible compliment.
Yeah, it's so good. I highly recommend it. But of course, today we're here to talk about this book.
Yes, so. let's get back on topic here.
Right. So most of your books are actually set in places you've lived, Delaware, Philadelphia, but several of your books are set in Louisiana with a connection to the Philippines. And that's a very unique, set of, circumstances. Can you tell us a little bit about your growing up years, about your background?
Yeah, so basically same as Marisol. I'm half Filipino, half white. I grew up in South Louisiana, and I don't delve too much about it in Marisol. I do in my other books, but especially Blackbird Fly, my first book. But she lives in an area where there aren't a lot of immigrant families, which is how I grew up as well. So that it's kind of she doesn't quite fit into the mold of her community, Yeah. And in Marisol Rainey, she talks about how she has like this big family living in the Philippines that she's never met. And when she thinks about them, she gets overwhelmed. And that's something that that would happen to me a lot, because when I was growing up, there was really no one who looked like me. Sure. And I would think about, like, would my life be easier if I lived somewhere else? Like, maybe if I lived in the Philippines, I wouldn't look so different from everyone else. But then when I would think about it, you know, kind of like Marisol, I would think about all these people that I'd never met.
Yeah.
And it's such a strange dichotomy to have a huge family that you've never met that live in another country, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I wanted to bring some of that in with Marisol's anxieties as well.
Yeah. And have you gotten to meet an extended family in the Philippines?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
I have since. Yes.
Yeah. I got to go to the Philippines about 3 or 4 years ago. It was quite an experience.
Yes, absolutely.
Really cool. And so I haven't yet read Blackbird Fly. I'm planning on it. I read the synopsis about a girl who turns to music during a difficult time. Was there a time in your life when you made your own discoveries in music that in a way that was really helpful to you?
You know, not music. For Blackbird Fly, I pretty much replaced writing with music. So Blackbird Fly is also very autobiographical. It's kind of me at age 12. Yeah. And I wasn't devoted to music the way Apple was, but I was devoted to writing. And so, you know, for me, I don't know if this is true for you too, but I have to create some kind of, even with Marisol, her family dynamics are different than mine, because she's very much me and Apple is very much me, but I have to have something different in there because I don't want it to be too much me. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I change a few things in there.
Yeah.
So I'm able to write it.
One of the themes in your books that runs pretty much constantly is the need for people to connect with one another. And I was wondering if in your own life, if that's really been amplified in the last year. How's the pandemic been for you, and what have you learned about yourself?
Wow. You know what? The number one thing that I've learned about myself, and maybe this is true for others as well, is that I like people much more than I thought I did. So, you know, there was a time where I'm just like, oh, people, they're the worst sometimes. I'm just exhausted of people. I just want to go into a hovel and never see people again, you know?
Yeah.
But actually, it didn't take long before I really missed people and being amongst people. I'm kind of like an extroverted introvert at this point. But it was a good lesson to learn, you know, that you miss the connections with people. You miss talking and sitting across from people. So I think that's the main thing that I learned about myself. And honestly, I've just been kind of feeling grateful that I don't have the stressors of young children who I have to get to school while I'm getting to work, or parents that I have to take care of, or sick people in my family. You know, there's so many people who are really, really struggling, and I'm very fortunate that I don't have a lot of those things that I have to worry about.
Yeah. And so you're a touring author. I think a lot of people are curious about what that lifestyle is like. Something that I've been really surprised by. I sat down once with Raina Telgemeier. She and I sort of play in the same fields, you know, graphic novelists, sort of, you know, I'm sort of a hybrid person, but we should be having kind of a very similar life, but hers and mine are so different. She does all of the festivals and she's constantly traveling when she's not working on a book. And I'm in a really different place. I'm mostly here because I have a bookstore here. So I get to meet all the authors who come through. I was wondering, paint a picture for us. What's it like? What sort of, when you launch a new book, what's it like for you?
So in normal times, it would look like going on tour and doing 1 to 3 school visits a day in different cities. So it might be 9 cities over a week and a half during that week. So if this were a normal time this week, I would be traveling to probably 9 cities and visiting schools. And almost exclusively schools. Yeah. And sometimes with the bookstore event associated at night. But so that's what it looks like. I do a lot of school visits throughout the year as well. Yeah. And I do a lot of conferences and things like that. Not quite as many festivals. I do some festivals, but I do things like the NCTE conference, the librarians conference. So it's very much focused on schools and libraries, but normally it is a lot of travel.
Yeah. And do you like it when you're getting ready to head out on a tour? Are you like, deep breath, or are you like, here I go, I can't wait to talk about this book?
It's a little bit of both. You know, I really love speaking. Like I love doing things like this. I love school visits. I love talking and giving speeches and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I think the hardest part is that the adrenaline shoots way up, and then you go home, you go to the, not home, you go to the hotel room, and then it's just like quiet. You know, you have like the signing line, you're talking to people, you're giving a presentation, then you go into the hotel room and it's just quiet, and you're kind of like full of all this nervous energy that has nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And then you tour, and then you come home and everything's quiet, you know, and you're just kind of like, I don't know what to do with myself right now. You know, I think that's been the hardest part for me, actually, is like managing the differences. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I found that in my early days of touring, I usually would go with a book handler. So I touched down in the city. I'd be picked up by a very nice person who's interested in books. We'd talk the whole way to the event. We'd go to the next event, on and on and on. And then I'd be deposited at my hotel room at like 10:30 at night.
Yes.
And I'd be like, I've never been so tired, ever. And I realized that so much of it, I'm an introvert. And, you know, I don't get energy from people. I sort of am drained by it. And I hate to say that, but it's the truth. And so I found that part of it was, you know, because once you get in that car, you're on, you know, you're on for the whole time, and you're never not talking. And that was really hard for me, actually. We just went on a tour. In fact, I've done 3 tours in the pandemic now. And because of the pandemic, the only thing I can really do is hand kids a book with a long pole. I've used a pool skimmer, a trident, and a shovel now. And I've got a mask on, and we've got music playing, and cars drive by, and I hand off the books, and I'm like,
that's pretty cool.
I have a lot more energy than I did.
Yeah, it is. It is draining. It's rewarding, but also exhausting. Yeah.
And some authors, I've met a few authors who have, Zoom has been a revelation for them. They've said, I don't think I'm going to ever tour again, because I like this. I can reach more people, and be more effective with my time. And I hate to travel. I was surprised by that. How do you feel about that?
You know what? Honestly, I could do any of it. Like I love doing virtual events, and I love going on tour and face to face. You know, I consider myself adaptable in that way. I think there's pros and cons. But honestly, the really cool thing about this is I've been to so many book launches and events this past year. I mean, that's one of the biggest pluses. A lot of my friends, events that I wouldn't have been able to do without this platform, which is really cool.
That's true. Yeah. Hopefully it'll be a tool that we can all use going forward. I just realized how out of balance I am with you. I should have, sat my chair up a little bit higher.
Level with the cat ears.
Yeah, I need the ears too. I read that your favorite thing about school events is the Q&A, and it is now that time to hear from the audience, not just me, but actual kids and grown-ups, because you've got a lot of grown-up followers. So Kim, we have a few questions in the queue. So why don't you pick a few?
Okay. So this is kind of cool. Rain knows both of you. 2 of her favorite authors had visited to the Philippines on your book tour, as you kind of mentioned earlier, Jeff. And she wants to know, what's the most memorable experience when you were meeting Filipino fans?
Go ahead, Erin.
Wow. Hi, Rain. I think for me, the most memorable thing was when I went to the International Book Festival in Manila. There had been a terrible storms, and crowds came out, even though they were like dripping wet, stood in line to get their book signed. And I remember being nervous because I wasn't sure. I mean, it feels silly to say this now, but I wasn't sure, like, would readers in the Philippines like my books? How would they feel about them? Because my characters are Filipino American, and what if I did this wrong or that wrong? Whatever goes through your head. And every single person wanted to hug me. Thank you for writing books with characters for the Philippines. And it was quite honestly a life-changing experience because Filipino culture figures so predominantly in my books, but from a Filipino American perspective. So it was so incredibly moving to have that connection with readers in the Philippines, because, you know, ultimately that's what I want to honor, right, is Filipino culture. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I could say something as deep. I had a great time in the Philippines. We did an event in a movie theater, and that's what stuck out to me, is that, you know, it was a good venue for, you know, we had a gigantic screen to play with, and it was really fun to do that and do something really different. And Rain, thank you very much. You've been such a loyal fan. I've seen Rain has showed up for a lot of our events. Rain Villanueva. So
yes,
thank you so much.
She has.
I love Rain.
All right.
Jerry Kraft is watching on Facebook.
Really?
Making comments from the peanut gallery. So hello, Jerry.
Hi, Jerry. Jerry went down the slide at a playground recently, and Jerry, I want you to know I climbed a tree. I don't know if you saw that or were here when we talked about that earlier. So we're both embracing our childhood, you know, selves.
Well, I don't know what you were talking about, Jeff, but he said, wait, which am I, Jeff?
That was like 25 minutes ago.
Yes, it was 22 minutes ago.
Great.
Yes, exactly.
Jerry, you're in my top 3. Does that make you uncomfortable? So he'll answer like 20 minutes later. Let's go with another question.
Okay, so we have a couple about your writing process and any tips that you have for writers or authors, and what your writing process looks like. How do you revise your rough draft to make them better?
Oh, wow. That's a lot. So my writing, I'm leaning over because I'm getting my, so my writing process, I'm going to try to encapsulate this as quickly as I can. This is the notebook for Hello Universe.
Wow.
I write everything longhand, my first drafts.
Wow.
And I'm a strong believer in writing longhand for first drafts. If you're able, not everyone is able for various reasons, but I feel like it creates a better connection with the work. It also kind of prevents you from doing too much revising as you go, because when you're typing in Word, it's a lot easier to just go back and reread and change. But in a notebook, it's a little different. That's not to say that I don't do revisions, because as you see, I do. So my process looks like this in the first draft. Then I sit down and put it in a Word document. And then when I transfer it from the notebook to the Word document, a lot of changes happen there again. And then I print everything out, and then I do the edits by hand again. So that's kind of my process. And revision is, there's so many ways to go about it, but what I do is I just sit there and read the manuscript from beginning to end in printed form, and I just make notes as I go. I mean, I know some writers will say, I'm going to focus on dialogue in this rewrite. I'm going to focus on scene in this rewrite. My mind does not work that way. I just kind of read it as a whole and just go in and make changes. And that's kind of how I approach it.
That's cool. I know the question wasn't for me, but I'll tell you, we work very differently. I write jokes based on components. So like I'm writing a sports book right now. So I'll think of every component that goes with sports. Water, sports drinks, exercise, the gym, shin guards, down, you know, and then I'll spend 15 to 20 minutes on each component. So today I wrote about dehydration, for example, and I'm like, you know, you can't get many jokes out of dehydration, I'm sorry to say, but I do all my jokes. I have 260 components. Then I see what kind of story comes out of those.
Wow, that is so interesting.
And I, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I pretty much start every book with characters. Like wow. I plot through my characters. All my ideas come from characters. Wow. So it's so interesting to me to think that you structure it without, characters are kind of like later. I know a lot of authors are like that too.
Yeah, that's why I've only got like 2 characters in my books. Maybe I need to flip things. All right, so Kim, I am very mindful of our time because I know we have another event tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to take one more question from the list of questions, and then we're going to pull in 2 real live kids. Do you think, Kim, that we can pull that off?
Maybe.
All right. So
maybe.
Yeah. I think it's a chance. So if we could get a kid that could say something in the chat, because it is hard to tell from in the ask a question who is a kid. So I have a question from Teresa.
Yeah.
And I have a question from Olivia. So if someone could say in the chat how old you are and if you have a question.
Yeah.
And then I will then I will invite you on screen, and then you will have to hit accept and let Crowdcast take over your computer. Okay, so excellent. So before we get started, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to invite a kid, and then Kate has a question. What is up for Marisol next? Does she have another challenge to conquer?
Of course she does. So her next challenge is, I will say that it is related to sports because she is not good at sports. You know, nor was I, by the way, of course. Not surprising to anyone.
That's literally the plot of my next book. So read mine. Make sure you don't steal anything.
Vice versa.
Right.
Well, we'll have to have another event, like you know, the anti-PE event.
Yeah.
That would be amazing.
So, you know what, Kim? Rain's camera is working today.
Okay, so we're going to invite Rain, and I've invited someone else. So we might get a couple kids at the same time, but that's okay.
All right.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. No, we have like 3 kids invited, so we're just going to like have a party on.
All right. We did an event with Neil Patrick Harris where he invited. He put cameras in 360 people's rooms. Interesting. Can we invite Olivia again? She said
yes.
It wasn't working. So
yep, I'm going to invite Olivia again. Yep.
All right.
And Rain is in the Philippines, I believe is what she said. That is just so cool.
It's perfect. So cool.
And we got Rain.
Oh. Okay, Rain, we see you today. And there's a little bit of echo, so sorry about that. Why don't you tell us your question for Erin?
Hello, Erin. Hello, Jeff. I'm a fan of yours.
Awesome. And do you have a question?
We're so nice. Wait.
Oh.
We've had a camera crash.
Technical difficulties.
I think we have.
Yeah. And Rain, tell us if you have a question.
Right now. Okay, so are you working on the second Marisol Rainey book, Erin?
Yes,
or
I am.
Another. Oh yes, yes. I haven't read. I haven't read both of your books. I love one of Jeff's books. This is so fantastic. Because illustrations, your artwork also inspired me, and I'm also Dave Pilkey, Telga Mayer, and all the rapid novelists, and I'm also a fan of middle grade and such.
Amazing. Oh, that's my friend Gail's book. Yay.
Dog man.
Thank you, Rain.
Yeah, thanks, Rain. Thanks for being a fan.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye. Okay.
Marianne.
And we see that Marianne Claire is now unmuted.
Hello. I was just wondering for both of you, who are some authors that were your inspiration as a kid and now?
Ooh, so I think Judy Blume was definitely my biggest inspiration, I think, when I was a kid. And now I love Rebecca. We talked about Rebecca Stead. I love Brandy Colbert. She's one of my favorite middle grade authors. My friend Ann Ursu, who I think might even be here, is an inspiration for me. I love Ann's books. There's so many. I don't even know. I couldn't. Christina Soon Tornvat, who wrote A Wish in the Dark. If you haven't read A Wish in the Dark and you love fantasy, please read that book. It's so good. I mean, I could really go on and on. This could be a whole nother hour of me gushing over people.
What's really fun is that the Kidlit community, of which we are both part of, is very supportive. I think that when you're a writer for adult books, it's a little bit more competitive, but the Kidlit community is very supportive. And so I have friends like Jerry Kraft and Raina Telgemeier and Dave Pilkey, and I have nothing but the best hopes for them, so that when they beat me on the bestseller list, I don't feel envious. I feel happy for them. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. And we have our last kid question of the night. Here we go.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is, how did you decide on what to change?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
And I think this is where other people come in that you trust, who can read your work, because it's hard to see the picture when you're inside the frame. That's one of my favorite expressions. So what happens is sometimes you can just kind of feel, I don't know, Jeff, if this is like you can just kind of feel that something's not working, or you're kind of slogging your way through, and then you know that you need to change something. And sometimes you give it to someone else who you trust, and they read it and they say, you know what, this scene doesn't really make sense. Maybe you should rethink it. And that's usually how it comes about. So it's part intuition for the author and part other people's trusted opinions.
Yeah. And what you might not know is that a lot of authors go through a lot of drafts. So my very last book was 23 drafts. So a lot of going back and forth with the editor. And you'll probably hear from teachers that writing is rewriting. And that's true, is that you'll become a better and better writer if you listen to criticism, honest criticism from your parents, from your teachers. Find people who are willing to criticize your work. Those people are very valuable to you. You don't just want to show it to relatives who say, oh, we're so proud of you. You want to show it to people who have a critical eye too, because they'll make you better.
Awesome. Thank you.
I really like your books, and I've read a lot of them. I've read Diary of the Wimpy Kid. I really like it, and it's one of my favorite book series.
Well, thank you.
Awesome.
I've read a lot of them, but I still haven't read some.
Okay.
Like the last couple of books.
Well, let me tell you something, and we'll end on this, is that one of the fun things about my books is that they're kind of gateway books, right? They help kids get better at reading. And then you can graduate to really sophisticated books like Erin's books. And so, and then it makes them so much more enjoyable because you've taken that step in between. So I really hope you'll do that. And thank you very much for your question.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
Whoops.
We cut her off, but it'll be next time, Erin. We'll get her. She had one more thing to say.
Oh, no.
Erin, I'm sorry that we have to rush off, but we have to get our next event going. So thank you so much for coming on. It was wonderful getting to know you, and I'm sure that our audience really enjoyed getting to know you as well.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you so much, Erin. And everyone, click on that green button down below, and you can get the signed book and the signed book plate, so you can stick it on your desk or wherever you would like. And thank you so much. This was so much fun. Thank you for your great questions.
Next time, Jeff, you have to bring your cat ears so you can be part of the club.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take those out of the closet. All right. See you guys. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Erin.